So I'm a fourth year PhD student in mathematics at the University of Oxford, and I'm not applying for postdocs. So I made a decision about a year ago that I don't want to stay in academia. So when I started my PhD, I was pretty sure that I would want to stay in academia. And so I thought I'd make this video to explain kind of my motivations for not applying for postdocs. I'll first talk about some kind of philosophy behind the research impact that, I could have by staying in academia, and kind of my reasons why I think it's not there are other things that I can be doing that can have more of a positive impact. And then I'll talk about kind of a more personal thing, which is I didn't have a very good relationship with my supervisor, or I don't have a good relationship with my supervisor. And so kind of another reason for me not wanting to stay in academia is I don't want to kind of perpetuate this thing where, I haven't had the best time doing my PhD. And because I haven't had a good time doing my PhD, that means I'm not as optimistic about how nice a postdoc would be. And then kind of the third reason that I've been thinking about and also talked about in another video is AI is going to kind of revolutionize academia. Okay, so before going to this conference where I realized that I don't want to stay in academia, I'd read this book by William McCaskill. So he's a philosophy professor at the University of Oxford, and he's one of the founders of the effective altruism movement. So effective altruism is this idea where you should behave in a way that does the most good. And so, I'm not entirely convinced by the arguments of effective altruism, but I do think they're a good, I think it's a valid way of thinking. So I was kind of assessing how good, if I stay in academia, what's the kind of positive impact that I can have. And so really with academia, it's kind of like a probabilistic thing where you kind of make incremental progress on a field, and then there's a potential that kind of further down the line, either you'll make a breakthrough or somebody else working on, using kind of standing on your shoulders, I guess, as Nietzsche would say, would make progress, and then that then leads to a positive impact. So there's kind of like a really small chance of large positive impact. And there's also a chance that, you spend all of this your effort on a research topic and it doesn't really lead anywhere. That's kind of that's a thing that you have to accept. And so I was kind of thinking about this, and I was under the impression or feeling that the research that I'm doing, maybe it's going to take an awfully long time for there to be any kind of real world benefit. I mean, many people will argue that you shouldn't, from a mathematics research, you shouldn't really be thinking about real world benefit, but I think it is something worth considering. And the kind of reason is the reason I started this YouTube channel was I've been writing some software which allows mathematicians to take notes more effectively. So it uses ideas from this thing called the Zettelkasten method. And so what I'd done is I'd written some software that lets you kind of typeset mathematics, make notes that are typeset mathematics, but you can also kind of link between the notes. And that software, it's pretty niche software and hasn't been downloaded an awful lot. But I'd spent maybe 50 hours or so writing this software, kind of using the software, developing the software. And I felt that making those videos and making that software had a much larger impact than all of the work that I'd done in my PhD. So it's like there are some really hard problems in the world, and you can get paid to try and solve those problems. But, for me, there are also simpler problems that you can solve. And if you work on those problems, then you can have more of a positive impact, or like the kind of likelihood of achieving a positive outcome by working on these things is just so much higher than it is staying in academia. And I think that was the kind of light bulb moment that I had. Yeah. And so when I was at the conference, I was kind of thinking about, listening to various talks, thinking about the applications, and being quite impressed by how hard people were working on these problems. But really, I was just thinking the best way that I can have a positive impact is probably not by carrying on with my research. And that was, and that's the decision that I've come to. So the second thing that I wanted to talk about was I don't have a very good relationship with my supervisor, and kind of why this has potentially led me to reach these conclusions. So I can kind of justify the conclusions with kind of the positive benefit analysis sort of thing. But maybe I was, maybe I ended up thinking like that because of the bad supervision. So basically with me, I think what happened was my supervisor kind of suggested a project that wasn't really within his area of expertise enough for him to provide good guidance. And so that led, and so I kind of felt that, I didn't make as good progress in the PhD that I could have done. So going back to the earlier argument, perhaps, it just seems like an awful lot of effort because I haven't had good supervision. So, and kind of because I'd had that bad relationship with my supervisor, I was kind of thinking, probably I don't want to perpetuate, this system where you have, professors who, or my experience was I have, my supervisor who doesn't really care about the research the PhD student's doing. And so I didn't really have a good time working with professor. It's not like I was, it's not like we were both like super interested in this topic, and we then ended up, working together on this thing. It was like I would go away, think about some abstract maths for a while, come back, and then my supervisor wasn't too interested in what I've been doing. So I accept that this is probably not, there are good supervisors out there, but this was just my experience with it. I think as well with applying for PhDs and then also potentially going on and doing postdocs, it's kind of like the least risky option if you're reasonably good at your research. So it's kind of like the default option and the thing that people might end up doing if you don't have an idea for something else that you could be doing. It's not like I've had, if I was to go and do a postdoc, I think there would be kind of a limited amount of kind of intentional decision making on my point. So it's like, okay, yeah, I've decided that I want to apply for a postdoc, but this is kind of the default position. And maybe I wouldn't have really thought, is this something that I actually want to do? Maybe there's kind of ideas of what I kind of expect of myself or what other people expect of me, and so it's kind of like, maybe it would be like you were just kind of drifting along, you do your PhD, then you apply for a postdoc. It's just kind of the natural progression that you can sort of, you can just kind of go that way if you don't really think too hard about what you want to do. I'm sure there are people who really want to do postdocs, but for me, I think if I was to end up applying for it, it wouldn't actually be the area that I want to work in. And I think that was kind of a fairly big realization. Like I should have, it took me a while to realize that it's not something that I want to do. And finally, and I've talked about this in another video, but I think the rate of increase in AI really means that academic jobs and funding will decrease in the coming years. So it might take a while for this to happen, but, you know, kind of 4 or 5 years down the line, with the rate at which AI systems have increased in their research capabilities, it's not obvious to me that there'll still be jobs available, you know, as much funding going into pure mathematics in the years to come. And so from a kind of job security point of view, I don't think it would be a sensible decision to apply for mathematics postdocs. So if you're interested in my views on this, then I made another video about that. I guess to conclude, I'll talk about what I want to actually do now, which is a very kind of difficult thing when anybody asks me and I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I've got this, so as I mentioned in this video, I have the note-taking system for mathematicians, and I'm going to kind of keep working on that. And I've also got kind of an idea of how to kind of generalize that into a note-taking system, or kind of a note-taking framework, which kind of builds on top of some software called Obsidian, or really it just build on top of notes written in Markdown. But so I've got some kind of software projects that I have in mind. So I think I'm going to work on those, and then probably keep making videos like this, and also make videos about the software projects, because I think those things are kind of areas where I can make, you know, have a reasonable amount of impact for the work that I'm doing, rather than staying in research. So thanks for watching. If you found these videos interesting, then maybe consider subscribing. And yeah, so I'll probably make another video soon.